Laura here for Legal Talk Tuesdays, and I am here to talk about some family law issues. I want to make sure that this is going live, and it looks like it is. How are you doing? It's Laura here with Legal Talk Tuesdays, and I want to talk to you today about some family law issues, about for people who are thinking about contemplating divorce. I know this has been a difficult time for all of us, being kind of stuck at home, whether you're stuck at home alone or you're stuck at home with your spouse and kids. Whether that's bringing up some issues. You might be thinking about things that have been happening for a long time, and I just wanted to kind of give you some ideas during this time to kind of think about how to be peaceful. And when we think about divorce, we typically think of fighting. Think of TV dramas and movies and things like that. Fighting, long, drawn out, expensive process. But it really is possible to divorce more easily and agreeably if you decide from the front end. You can make the decision any time, but it helps if you make it kind of on the front end that you're going to handle this peacefully like adults and try to minimize costs and make it as agreeable as possible for everyone. So here are 5 tips for you to help you with divorcing peacefully. Tip 1 is, marriages end for many reasons, and emotions can run really high during divorce. It's an emotional time, but the biggest, tip number 1 is to avoid the blame game. When you have reached the point of divorce, it's pointless and unproductive to assign blame to one another. If you're focusing on the past, it's going to be very difficult to divorce peacefully and with a good outcome. So look towards the future instead of kind of holding on to resentments and things like that, because that's going to, complicate things through the process of getting divorced. Tip number 2 is to stay out of the weeds. If anybody watching or listening has ever worked in the food industry, like many of us have, I was a waitress for a long time when I was younger, putting myself through school, then you know what I mean when I say staying out of the weeds. So when you're getting divorced, people can sometimes really get hung up on the smallest things. Of course, if it's important to you, then you need to address the issue, but you really should be focusing on big picture stuff. Your overall goal. What's the most important thing to you? What are the non-negotiable things that you're, have an opinion on, whether it's assets or kids or whatever it might be. Negotiating every tiny little thing is going to be really costly, timely. It's going to take a lot more time, and it's really going to end up not being very pretty. In my former life as a full representation divorce lawyer, I had a divorce that was held up for several days over a 10-year-old beat up recliner. It probably cost the parties an extra $1,000 or more to fight over that old chair for several days. And it ended up going to the person that was keeping the house in the long run. And you really could have bought a new armchair in the time that it took and the attorney fees that it took to fight over that old beat up chair. So keep that in mind. No one really wins in a divorce. I don't like it when people say, and attorneys will say this often, that they won in the divorce. Nobody really wins, but focusing on the important stuff will increase your chances of being happy with the end result and remaining civil with your spouse during the process. Civility, peacefulness, that's really a goal if you're getting divorced, especially if you're going to be co-parenting with shared children. Tip number 3, many times there's an imbalance in finances within the marriage. Sometimes one spouse makes more, sometimes one spouse is more informed, so you're going to have people who have, better knowledge, maybe better finances, that kind of thing. The tip is to negotiate honestly. It's really difficult to hide things and stretch the truth, and it can really be bad for you if it comes out later. So especially when it comes to money, be forthcoming with information, be cooperative in the process. You may still squabble about child support or division of debt, but if you're being shady and trying to hide things and, gouge the other person, then the trust is going to be broken, and it's going to be extremely difficult to keep that divorce peaceful once that happens. So try to be as forthcoming as possible and negotiate honestly. Tip number 4, and for those of you that watch us on a regular basis, me talking about family law, you know that kids are my kind of trigger button. So tip number 4 is, if you have kids, then they come first. Put their needs first all the time. That's the most important thing that you can do. Is if you're going into a divorce with children involved, then you really need to keep them in mind every time you get ticked off about something, or get mad because somebody didn't do something, whatever it might be. Put the kids in mind first. That's the only thing the court cares about. So keep that in mind too. The kid's best interest is all that the court cares about. So that's really how you should approach your divorce process. You and your spouse aren't the only ones going through this. Your kids are going through it too. And so you need to keep them out of the process as much as possible. But you as co-parents need to stay focused on your kids, and that encourages you to avoid behaviors that are destructive. And it really sets you up for a successful co-parenting relationship in the future after the divorce actually happens. So if you have kids involved, their needs come first all the time. Tip number 5 is, kind of common sense, but a lot of people don't think of it this way. Don't wait until attorneys are involved or you are in court to work through the terms of your divorce. Try to settle as much as possible prior to the divorce, and do so respectfully with your spouse. Also, there really are alternative ways for you to get divorced. Not everything's like kind of what I said earlier, not everything's like what you see on TV shows or in movies. I know one of my favorite movies is the Netflix movie. It's not actually one of my favorite movies. It's one of my favorite movies for what I do for a living, which is family law. And it really does, it's that Netflix movie with Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson, where they're getting divorced. It's a really nasty, drawn-out process because they hired attorneys to fight. And the fighting, really gets so negative. If you haven't watched that movie, I can't think of the name. If I think of it, I'll put it in the comments later. But it really encourages people to, if you hire attorneys who are all about the fight, it really encourages people to fight. And then you spend a lot of money. You have really hard feelings with each other. And especially, again, if you have a child or children, then nobody ends up in a good place at the end of the day. So look at alternative ways to get divorced. One alternative way is through mediation. Mediation is where a third party sits in a room, can be virtual because right now we're all doing virtual things, sits in a room with you and helps you kind of hear each other. Here's what Judy is saying. Here's what Paul is saying. Let's see if we can come to an agreement based on what I hear you say and what I hear you say. So these are very important things for a mediator to be able to kind of take down the emotion and help kind of iron out things based on the verbiage that you use, the words that you use, and come to an agreement. You can also pursue a collaborative divorce. We don't have that a ton here in Arkansas, but a collaborative divorce is where you're working towards a common goal with an attorney. It's very similar to what we actually do here at MyVirtual.Lawyer, where you can come to an agreement on your own with the assistance of an attorney, where we give you advice, maybe prepare your legal documents, help you navigate the legal system, but you're actually doing it all yourself, and you're having those negotiation talks with your spouse as well. We understand that that's not every situation is going to be peaceful. I used to handle domestic violence divorces. That's, obviously a different kind of situation that is on its face just not necessarily going to be peaceful. But in most situations, it really can be peaceful if both parties agree that they want to be civil with each other and not do knockdown, drag-out fights. The goal for any divorce is not to have a judge decide what's going to happen, because the judge doesn't care about you. They care about the kids if there are kids involved, but they don't really care about whose spoons these are and whose armchair that is. So really the goal is to be peaceful, negotiate honestly, and kind of understand that it's best to be as civil as possible in the whole process for everybody's emotional sake. So just to wrap up a little bit today, thank you so much for joining us. Divorce, by its nature can be very heated, but it doesn't have to be a really negative situation and process. So doing these things, these 5 things are keys to going through your divorce amicably, where you can trust one another and, make sure that you leave not even more unhappy than when you started. So thank you for joining us again. And next week, Brooke's going to be back talking about some business law issues in Arkansas. And we will see you. We hope everybody stays safe and stays cool because we're getting into hot, hot weather right now. So thank you again, and we'll see you next time. 11:30 a.m. Central next Tuesday. Thanks so much.